Hi guys, so it is Sunday today. I'm recording this on the day that it's going to be released. I thought that it was worth spending a video talking about the season so far, sort of like a midterm report card, because it is the middle of July now, getting towards the end of July. I think it's the 24th. Yeah, the 24th. I picked my first blackberry on Friday, just gone, the 22nd, and it's been a real odd year for me personally and for my family. It's been a one-of-a-kind year. We're never going to have a year like this again with the house move and what have you. So I thought it was worth just spending a minute and taking stock of the year so far for us and how it's gone and going around the garden. And you'll also notice that I'm starting this video in my Polytunnel, and I'm also wearing long sleeves. Now, why is that odd? Well, because for the last couple of videos, it's been bright sunshine, very, very hot. And if you follow the podcast or you live in Europe or the UK, then you're going to know that we've had a heat wave. And just 5 days ago, we've had the hottest temperatures ever recorded here. We've had wildfires and fires all over places that don't usually have problems like that. Like even in London, there's been all sorts of fires, just extreme heat. That's caused some real significant problems. And just 5 days later, here we are. I'm in my Polytunnel, I'm wearing a jumper, and I'm not hot because that's how the weather goes here. Today it is around, currently about 18 degrees. So it's warm enough I can wear shorts, but it's certainly not a warm day. And we've got a little bit of wind as well. You can probably notice the Polytunnel flapping around a bit behind me. It's been a real up and down year. We've had lots and lots of failures, but we've also had lots of successes. And sometimes when you're mired in the failures, it can be really easy to forget about the successes and forget to take a moment to celebrate the wins. So we're going to be looking at both sides of that coin today, and I thought we may as well start right here in the Polytunnel. I'll also, as we go, I'll get you a bit caught up on where we are, because there's a few things happened since I last did a sort of vlog here. So we are still sowing. Just yesterday I sowed another batch of seeds, and we've got a few of these are just herbs that are designed to come in and take the place of some of our other herbs which we've already got. So for example, we sowed some, not here, but in the pots that we've already got our parsley in, we sowed a load of parsley seeds. I'll talk a bit more about that when we get down there, because there's a reason I've done that. But out here we've sowed some more oregano, some dill, we've got some nasturtiums. Now the reason I've sown these is because most of my sowings didn't come to anything. So this is my sort of last attempt at getting a decent amount of nasturtiums this year, really. We've also sown some spring cabbages. So these guys will be going in the Brassica tunnel in probably a month or two, when some of our earlier brassicas will be finished and be coming out. Again, we'll talk about that when we get into the brassica cage. I've also sown some more calabrese. We've got some chard and some more iceberg lettuce. And then over here, we've got some more of our seedlings, which we sowed a few weeks ago, which are going to be ready to go out in the next week or two. We've got quite a lot of swede, which are these guys just here. And in a couple of weeks, they'll be ready to go out. Also got a few more lettuce crops and salad crops and things like that, which are to go in place of what's out there. Generally speaking, here in the Polytunnel, how are we looking? Well, tomatoes are going amazingly. We've started harvesting our tomatoes. We've been eating tomatoes for maybe a week now in the house, and there's nothing like a tomato. So good, fresh off the plant. You guys will already know this, but that tomato that I've just eaten, it's a completely different product to what you'll buy in the supermarket or the store. It's just, they're not the same thing. They're really not. Fresh off the plant, just fantastic. So specifically talking about our tomatoes, I think generally speaking, it's going to be a really successful year. Now, I have never in my life, now this is one of the big changes between here and where we used to live, because I'm managing a lot less overall. You know, there's no goats to milk, there's no pigs to feed, there's no hedges to trim to speak of. I'm able to really focus my attention and time on what we are doing. You'll notice these tomatoes, they look vastly different than they have in previous years. And that's because I've been able to pinch them out and tie them up and trail them, every single one of them. We don't have any of this mass sprawling mess of tomato plants that we usually have. Now, what we have suffered with is, I'm going to take these off, these stems down here that are yellowing and browning. We have suffered with that quite a bit with our leaves yellowing on some of these tomato plants, but they're all coming back, and you'll notice the growth at the top is much lusher, and it's less apparent on this side of the tunnel. Actually, it's mainly over here. I don't know what that's down to. I'm fairly confident that it's a root issue. Generally speaking, when your leaves discolor, it's a root issue, and you can see here the newer growth is much better. I put that down to the fact that we've gone into an unestablished bed. This is a new bed that we've made. We've got that cardboard under there, which is, these roots would have found their way down through that by now, I'm sure. But there would have been a period when we were maybe fighting against that cardboard a little bit, or we were struggling with what our watering regime should be, because next year, and in previous years when we've grown tomatoes, we'd be planting into soil that was already established. So when we plant into this next year, there'll be no layer of cardboard. Those roots will be able to go straight down into the soil. The nutrients that's in this compost and in the compost that we will add to it next year will all have a chance to kind of meld together. And I think it's going to be just much easier for almost all of our plants to establish. And I have to say that a lot of our failures this year have got to do with the way that we just rushed getting all of our beds established. That's what I put this discoloration down to. I could be wrong. If you are a tomato expert and you can tell me otherwise, please do. Don't be shy. Tell me in the comments, because as I say, I don't consider myself to be an expert on any of these things. I'm just learning as I go. I'm talking about what I'm thinking out loud. I'm thinking out loud in public. So please do let me know if you know what the issue is. Like I say, on this side, it's much less of a problem, but it was still happening, and it still is to a degree on these lower leaves. So you see just here, we're going to take this one off. But in terms of cropping, we're going to have lots. There's lots and lots of tomatoes over all of these plants, and we've got more tomato plants outside. It's been a great year for the outside tomatoes because of that hot weather we've had, I think. Now, one thing we are struggling with this year is our cucumbers. And you'll see over here, we do have some cucumbers. We've been eating cucumbers in the house for a little while, but a lot of them just don't look healthy. These two here, these two plants are sort of baby cucumbers. So this guy's ready to come in. And this one over here is going to be full length, full size cucumbers, sort of a foot long or so. So we haven't had any off of this plant yet. As you can see, it's just struggling a little bit. I can't put my finger on what it is, but if you know, let me know in the comments. And our chilies they're all doing okay, but they're a little bit stunted. I would have liked to have seen them put on a bit more growth by this stage. We're not seeing any chilies yet. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that, but I'm less concerned because we've got loads and loads of chilies from previous years that we've already got dried and stored in the house. So that's basically the polytunnel crops, or at least the ones I get involved with. My wife's ground cherries down here. These have been overwintered now for 2 years. They're doing really well. We had 2 pots of these. We lost one of them in the overwintering. So 50% success rate on those, but we didn't bring them in the house like we did the previous year. We just left them in the polytunnel. It's actually quite breezy today, so if there's a bit of background noise, forgive me, I do apologise. I want to talk about the garden in general, and it's really easy to forget because we can, or I can at least, focus on what's not going right, but it's really easy to forget how much we've actually achieved. When we first moved in, that hedge there was overgrown right out to the middle of the lawn. There was nothing along this side at all. Well, there was actually a row of like shrubs and overgrown hedging that we just didn't want. And everything you see here that's relating to growing food is something we've established in the last few months. We only moved in Easter, so we've actually achieved a great deal. And you know, all of these beds are new, that arc is new, and it's really easy to forget how far we've come. Now, I'm not going to spend too long talking about my wormery today, but I will say that they survived the hot weather. They're doing really well in there. There'll be lots more updates on this, but I'm going to leave it for a little while I get to grips with it and I sort of understand the system and I learn about it, and then I'll come back on that in a couple of months. So we've got our other composting systems kind of up and running. There will be some changes to that as we develop our space, because we're actually going to be gaining a bit of space behind our sheds. That's not our property boundary. Where that gate is not our property boundary, we're moving that back, and it's going to free up some storage space and some opportunities to develop more composting systems. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is our container gardening. We've got a fair bit of container growing going on. Even behind me, Behind me over there, tucked in between the Brassica cage and the Polytunnel, we've got more. And overall, they've been a real success. So these are all beetroot in here, and they're starting to develop nice roots already. Now, this wasn't our first sowing of beetroot. You might remember our first sowing, we lost them all to cutworms. So we've moved them because they were planted in the main bed, which is where we've got that problem. So we've moved them out here, or re-sown, and got a load out here. And so far, so good. Along with the seeds that I put in yesterday, I've also re-sown in that container back there. I've re-sown half of that with carrots and half of that with beetroot. Again, successional sowing. It's about the end of the season now for getting things like that in, but I'm confident I'll get crops out of both of those, because I can always, because they're in containers, I can always extend my season by using the Polytunnel when we start getting frosts. The potatoes are going really, really well. Most of the rest of these containers here are all potatoes. Now, of course, it's nowhere near the amount of potatoes we used to grow, but it's going to give us a good crop. We're going to get lots and lots of dinners out of all of these potatoes. We also struggled a little bit with timing, so we only were able to grow first earlies. That's all we put in. And realistically, I probably could have grown more. I could have grown some main crop varieties, but everything was a rush. When we first moved in, we were just rushing to get everything done. So we planted first earlies. That's what we're getting. That'll have to do this year, but hopefully we'll have some more space. Some news on that probably in my next video about us potentially getting some more space. Stay tuned for my next video for that. But these are just about ready to harvest now. They're going to be happy in the ground for a little bit longer. No rush to get them out, but I'm planning on using some of these in September for my September challenge. Down here, we've got some watercress. Now, I'd like a larger container, really, and grow more of this. Again, it's about space and everything else. We grew this just from watercress leaves that you buy in the supermarket. You can put them in any piece of water and they will propagate. These are all roots that they've just put on from the original cuttings, if you like, from the watercress that you buy in the supermarket. So I put in the bottom of this bucket maybe 3 or 4 inches of compost, loads of water, that's it, done. In here we would have probably what we'd call our second round of successional sowing beetroot and carrots, and we've got a couple of really, really poorly peas, which we don't need to talk about. The next dedicated section that I want to talk to you about is our Brassica cage. Now, you'll notice above me, we've put a shade cloth over this during that really, really hot weather because we were really worried about all of our brassicas bolting. Well, it's difficult to say how much it helped because we did lose most of our calabrese, which are all of these plants in front of me. They all bolted, they all ran to seed. So we harvested what we could, and we've been fortunate because most of them are sending up lots of side shoots. So we're going to be able to continue cropping these, not the same, but almost the same as sprouting broccoli for a little while, as long as they play along. So we are going to get some more broccoli crop from these, which is such a relief. I was so devastated when we lost all of these. And part of the reason I was so upset was because I just lauded the success of this Brassica cage so much. It was doing so well. I'm growing completely differently here than we have done in the past. Usually I put my brassicas out with everything else and I let them fend for themselves, and we probably lose 90% of the crop because we had the space to do that. I think that was a mistake. Even with that space, it was a case of me not knowing any better, not learning any different ways of gardening, because the differences between the plants that I've got in here and the brassicas that we planted out there is night and day, and this is how I will always do it regardless of what kind of space I've got in the future, I think. And it's just part and parcel of the learning process. So with that, you know, just saying to my wife almost daily, oh my goodness, look how well those brassicas are doing in the cage, to then lose so many to the weather, to the extreme heat, was just absolutely devastating. But on the bright side, there's nothing we could have done about that. It's not like it was our fault, you know, it's just part of facing really, really extreme weather that we're not used to. You know, we couldn't possibly have predicted that we were going to get 40-degree temperatures here. It is what it is. I'm okay with that. And so what we've got in here, we've got calabrese, which is right in front of me. Behind me, we've got cauliflower, and then the other half of the Brassica cage is mostly sprouting broccoli. Now we've also got down here our succession sowings. This is our second lot of sowing down through here in between these two rows, and as these get bigger, these guys will be coming out. Like I say, there's only a few weeks left of harvesting these and the cauliflower behind me, I think, and that will leave loads of space for these guys. And we've got other successional sowings, like I said, that we started just yesterday as well, so we should get a really nice crop this year. Just as we leave the Brassica cage, it's worth just mentioning we've also got a couple of tomato plants in there again, which have done really well, better than any outside tomatoes I've ever grown, and I put that down to the weather, not to anything I've done. And then over here, a couple more containers, carrots and more beetroot, because beetroot's one of our favorites. And then that brings us on to the rest of the bed, the main crop, main space season growing bed. It's been really hit and miss here, and I put that down to one thing entirely. And what I put that down to is just the way we set the bed up in terms of timing. And I don't mean the time at which we did it, I just mean the time that we had to do it. We rushed so much. So everything we did was just done at 100 miles an hour. We set the bed up really fast, didn't plan anything, didn't plan what was going to be planted where. Which is one of the most fun parts of gardening, isn't it? Before you get your seeds in the ground, you do all your drawing and you mark what's going to go where and things like that. We just absolutely rifled through all of this, and as a result, you know, we've had lots and lots of failures. So we've got a patch of onions just here, which realistically we probably shouldn't have bothered planting. We were at the garden centre. It was really difficult to get hold of seedlings. I don't know if you remember that video when we were buying all of our seedlings, because when we moved in, we'd missed the boat for a lot of our first sowings, so we had to buy seedlings, and we were a little bit restricted on choice. We planted a load of onion seedlings that took up maybe a fifth of this whole bed, that realistically we probably should have given to other crops that just would have delivered a little bit better for us. We also had a load of brassicas left over that there wasn't room for in the Brassica tunnel. Here we go. And you can see a load of them here. This is why they do so much better in the tunnel, in that Brassica cage. One of the reasons. And you'll notice, like before, if you're interested, it's the purple varieties that are still here. There was a lot of green varieties as well. They're all completely wiped out. But the pigeons and the moths and the caterpillars, they've taken their toll on the brassicas that were out here. And to be honest, that's okay, because when we put them in, they were just the spare ones that wouldn't fit in the cage. And we just thought, well, we may as well throw them in the garden and see what happens. They're either going to grow or they're not. And I'm pleasantly surprised, actually, that so many of them have. And these guys are coming back. They will crop. It won't be a huge crop, but we will get a crop from them. So they're going okay. The carrots that we planted out are doing fantastically. So that's something else that we're eating right now. Our courgettes are way behind everybody else's. I don't know why. Obviously, we would have liked to have sown our own and got them out a little bit earlier, but they are cropping now, but we've only just started being able to harvest from them. And then one thing that has been a real success out here has been our lettuce, our salad. Now, we eat a lot of salad here, and I have to say, this row here, red salad bowl, we've been using this as a cut and come again crop, and this has gotten us right through till now. It's done really well, both of these two rows. And this is some butterhead lettuce on the back. We're probably ready to take pretty much most of this out now and just eat it without having to use it as cut and come again, because hot on its heels, we've got all of these, which are all heading lettuce of one type or another. Most of them are iceberg. I can't remember what the others are, but we've got lots and lots of lettuce ready to come through. We've got more sowings and seedlings, so we'll be ready to plant more lettuce seedlings out in a couple of weeks, and then more after that, maybe 4 weeks after that. So lettuce, great, we've done really well, and that's something we eat a lot of here. And as I said, our outside tomatoes are doing quite well. If you remember these, and this one I do need to pinch out and train and trim a little bit, but all of these, and along the back there, they were all just cuttings that we took from the tomatoes in the Polytunnel, and we rooted them in water and then planted them out, if you remember. Now, one huge failure while we're in this bed that we've had is beans. We have just struggled with beans this year. Most of the beans, the climate, and peas, beans and peas. So most of them we sowed along that back edge there to climb up these strings. And we must have lost planting after planting, and I put that down to the fact, if you see there, we've got that piece of 4x4 that retains the soil. We've only recently put that in. We didn't have any here to do the rest of the bed, so the rest of the bed just slopes off. So I think we've really struggled with moisture retention at that back edge. Anytime we've watered, the moisture has just been able to run out the back, and I think that's what we've lost most of our beans to, is just not being able to keep that moisture in the ground. But that doesn't explain everything, because even here, these are our French beans, dwarf French beans, so purple TP and Sinesta beans, and it's taken 4 sowings to get these guys to come up. So I don't know what the deal is there. That's our second sowing of leeks. We've got a few other bits and bobs. We've got some odd perpetual spinach down here, which is great. So this will crop right through the winter, and we've just put some chard out somewhere. I can't remember where that is, but we've got 1 chard plant and more in the polytunnel to come out later. Those, along with the swede that we spoke about earlier, that's going to be a lot of our winter crops. And of course, a lot of our brassicas will go through the winter as well and into the spring. It's been a real mixed bag out here, but there's reasons for most of the failures. And I think next year, with us having a more normal, for us, spring, we'll be able to combat a lot of those issues. And we've also got lots of fruit bushes, which are going to be going in when our fencing gets done, hopefully in a couple of weeks. So we're going to have fruit bushes along that side. We've got them at the moment. There's a loganberry right at the top there in the middle of the grass, which is going to move. We've got these blueberries, some raspberries, and a currant bush, black currant bush, and gooseberry bush. So these guys will all have a home down that side of the garden. And then we've got loads and loads and loads of herbs, which have been a success for the most part. We've lost a couple of sage plants. So we lost both of the sage plants that we brought here, and then we bought another plant, lost that one as well. But I finally made this guy happy. We've repotted him for the second time now into this pot, and this guy's really happy. Sage is one of the herbs we use a lot of. We love to have roast chicken dinners, and this is a great plant for making stuffing with our onions and breadcrumbs. So yeah, really happy to have this guy established. I do want to get it in the ground eventually. It's going to go over there on the same side of the garden as our fruit bushes once that fencing's done. But this is just a really important plant to me, so it's really good that that one's going. We've got other plants doing really well. We've got basil there and there. This is, I think, what's this called? I think this is a Greek basil. I'm not sure, but we've got 2 different types of basil: chives, oregano, thyme. Our thyme plant is struggling as well, but I think that's the only other one down here. I said I'd mention about the parsley actually. So this is parsley. Now, parsley is not a perennial, it's a biannual. So this is in its 2nd year. It has gone to seed, or started to, and we've been pulling out the seed heads just to try and get a bit more life out of it. And I've sown new seeds underneath, which will come over and take over for the plant. And then we'll sow another load of seeds next year, so that there'll always be, if we allow it to just self-seed from that point on, there will always be fresh parsley. Obviously, we'll need to extend the pot or get it in the ground and feed it somehow. We won't use chemical fertilizers, but we'll come up with a way of getting nutrients into the pot, because when you're growing a perennial in a pot, you need to make sure that you're feeding it somehow, because it's going to be taking nutrients out of the soil, and that's got to come from somewhere. And we've got our bay tree, which is still in the process of settling in. It's just been repotted, but yeah, I'm just... Generally speaking, I'm happy. Our rosemary and lavender both made the trip okay. We've got some mint there drying, and I think that's about it in the garden. And obviously it goes without saying that we've done all the work in the house as well. So, you know, that we've achieved a tremendous amount this year, which I'm really happy with. The last thing I'm just going to share, because I got a few questions about our pick your own fruit and dehydrating and what have you. So we decided to purchase some more strawberries because they were reduced in the supermarket, and we got a load more dehydrating. It's always worth doing that. If you've got a dehydrator, you can purchase things when they're reduced because they're on their sell by date or whatever, and then you can take them home and preserve them and use them for, you know, the future beyond that date. But we've got loads and loads of dried stuff here. We've got all of our dried fruit, and I'm using a lot of it in muesli, which is my brunch, if you like. That's what I'm eating in the mornings. We're in the process of using up a lot of the stuff that we're about to be glutting in. So we're going to be using up lots of things like our courgette chutneys, and I would say chilies, but we don't have too many coming, so we'll ease off them. But a lot of our dried mushrooms from last year. As we look forward into mushroom season, I've just put the last of my walnuts in this mix because it's a massed year. We're going to see loads of walnuts this year. I'm really, really excited about harvesting those. So like I say, we're running down our stocks of some things in preparation to replace them. So that's my mid-season report card for where we're at. So I hope you found that enjoyable. Behind me there, I've got a pallet that I'm making a new spice rack from when I get a minute. Who knows when that'll be? I'm very busy at work at the moment, but yeah, that's got you all caught up on what's going on here. And I will just mention the podcast. If you don't already listen, please do consider checking out the Self-Sufficient Hub podcast, because we release 3 times a week and I do giveaways for our patrons on Fridays. So if you only watch the YouTube channel and you are a patron, then perhaps you're missing out, and you should maybe go and check out the podcast as well. But also, if you're not a patron, do consider supporting what I'm doing here at patreon.com/self-sufficient-hub. That's going to wrap this video up. Thanks ever so much for watching, everyone. Please do leave me a comment down below, press that like button, and if you're not already, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, guys. Speak to you soon. Cheers.